Hello, let's talk about books. As you know, because you'll have been here before, there's nobody new. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for subscribing. We are talking about the books that I read in 2022 in bite-sized chunks. I've got to record these like closer to the time where I read the book so I actually remember the book, because you may have noticed the trend of I have no idea, and that's exciting. So anyway, there's a whole playlist if you need to catch up. Links to find me are below, including my blog where I write longer reviews of books, including some of the books I'm going to talk about today. We are up to number 36. I think all the books I've got to talk to you today about, except one, I read on my Kindle. We're starting off with Lauren Groff, Matrix. I read this in June on my Kindle, and that's because it came up as a daily deal. It had been on my radar for a while, but I nabbed it in the daily deal, which meant obviously I had to read it on the Kindle. I was interested in it because it was medieval. Yeah, it is medieval nuns in England, which is entirely my wheelhouse, medieval and religion. It's the story of Marie, must be Marie because she's French, and she is a bastard sibling of royalty, and so rather than be a threat to power, she's popped into a convent where she becomes abbess eventually. Marie gets these visions to protect the nuns, protect herself and protect her nuns from the outside world and from men in particular, and so she goes about doing all these insane things to insulate the convent from the world. And it's really funny actually, in a like an insane people with power and money kind of way. But at the end, there's a higher purpose to these visions and to this insulating of the sisters, and I don't want to give away any spoilers. It was a really good read. It's a really good look at women's religion in medieval time, I think. But in terms of like explaining the point, I missed it. I mean, I enjoyed it. What have I written in my notes? Oh, by the way, I've got my bullet journal here with my notes, because otherwise we'll just go off topic real quick. I've written here, taking a real figure, which is true. Murray is taken from a real person. Taking a real figure and giving her a story can always feel forced, but there is more going on here, and it's ultimately about love. Yeah, that is true. Murray finds love in the convent, love for her sisters and daughters, love for herself, and love for God. But the story ends with Murray as a tool, and a tool that is broken. A different book to the one I was expecting, but no less satisfactory for it. I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. And this quote I really liked. I wrote down, "Aging is a constant loss. All the things considered essential in youth prove with time that they are not. Skins are shed and left at the roadside for the new young to pick up and carry on." So take that with you as you age and die. Next, also on the Kindle, also a daily deal, which is why I picked it up, is Taylor Jenkins' Reid, Malibu Rising. I've written an extended review of this, link to which, oh god, I just looked up and I thought, oh my god, that's not recording. It is recording. Alright. Heart attack done. You'll find a link to a longer version of this below, but basically I didn't like it. That's the TLDR. So Malibu Rising is set in the same world as Taylor Jenkins' Reid, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and Daisy Jones in the Six, which I've not read. Carrie Soto is Back, which just came out this year. This one's the story of the children of a celebrity who are trying to make their own way in the world. They have no contact with him, but of course their surname is famous and it impacts their lives. But also the life of their mother, and being a single parent and raising them has also impacted their lives, obviously. The conceit of the story is that Malibu is a tinderbox. Fires will sweep through and devastate the area, but people continue to rebuild there like phoenixes from the ashes. What is the plural of phoenix? Phoenixes or phoenixes? Phoenix. Is it Greek or is it Latin? Off topic. Right. Let me know if you know, plural phoenix. Anyway, so that's the premise of the story. Is it's set in Malibu. These fires sweep through, devastate everything. People rebuild their lives. An anvil would be more subtle than that in getting the point of this story. So these 4 children have a party every year, and everybody who's anybody knows where the party is and just assumes an invite. And so the party becomes this pivot point in the lives of everybody, where they come to the party, shit goes down, it changes their lives. It's actually really boring. Like, the 4 kids, it's fine. It was okay, I guess. But at least half of the plot is people that you haven't met yet come to the party. You get the interaction at the party, the way the party changed their life, and then they leave again. Repetitive and tedious and unnecessary. I think it would have been a stronger story without that, if it was the story of the 4 siblings, their interactions with each other, the way the party changed their lives, which it does, and then maybe the aftermath, or maybe leave it as a short story. But it just felt bloated and unnecessary to have all these other parts in the story. There is a line early on: how are you supposed to change in ways both big and small when your family was always there to remind you of exactly the person you apparently signed, and I can't read my writing, signed a contract to be, there's a word in there I can't read. How are you supposed to change when your family expects you to behave in a particular way because that's how you've behaved in the past, is the point of this book. And then at the end, they've all changed. They've had their crisis moment. They've moved through it. They've moved on. I gave it 2 stars, and I feel like that was because it was readable. Taylor Jenkins Reid is incredibly readable, and you can just blow through it in 1 or 2 sittings. But as I said, there are more cogent thoughts in my blog where I proofread it and everything. Next, again on the Kindle, was Ellis Peters' A Morbid Taste for Bones. This is the first in the Brother Cadfael books, and it's also a reread for me, just because I wanted to remember where the Cadfael story started, but also because the first one's very different to the rest of them. From the second one onwards, Peters has developed the tone for Cadfael, and it's different from the first one. Just remembered here from my notes, I was reading a book about medieval science at the time, and the whole time it was talking about monks and monasteries and science, and I was like, I want to go back and hang out with Cadfael. And I gave it 3 stars on this read. There's not much more to say. You either want to read Brother Cadfael or you don't, I think. It's just a quintessential medieval cozy mysteries with a monk who's, quite flexible on the rules in order to get the detectiving done. Sure. The medieval science book I was reading, again on the Kindle, was called The Light Ages by Seb Falk. Where's my thoughts? I picked it up because it's a medieval pop history, but medieval science pop history. And by pop history, I mean something you'll find in paperback in your bookstore rather than a hardcover $100 academic text. It's a bit more palatable for the masses. I didn't actually write up a review of this in my notes, but I'm pretty sure I wrote a review on my blog. So again, links below, cross promo life. I enjoyed this one. I learned a lot, actually. It delved very deeply into astronomy, and it was way over my head, and that was okay because the book's just like, you know what, cool, if you don't understand it, just keep going. It's not important if you don't understand how to find the equinox and the elliptical and other astronomy words. But there is a cool section on how brothers in monasteries, especially Benedictine monasteries, would communicate and count, because there's a rule of silence in monasteries, some monasteries, and so they would use their fingers for counting or for tabulating the date. That sort of thing. How we came up with things like the astrolabe and the sophistication, the tweaking of those scientific instruments to get them more precise or to answer a different question, which is how science works. So this quote, which basically sums up a lot of the talk about science in the book, it's about how some inventions, like invention an actual object or in an idea can be traced back to like earlier times, earlier centuries, other parts of the world. But, and here's the quote, nevertheless, they remind us how often an invention that at first appears revolutionary turns out on closer inspection to be hard to distinguish from a long history of incremental improvements. So if you don't come up with anything revolutionary in your life, but you've improved on something from beforehand to suit your purposes, that's what scientists do. The story is centered around one particular monk because you have to have a framework for the narrative, obviously. It does say medieval, it's medieval Europe within monasteries. And then finally, a real book that I can hold up and you can see the pretty cover is Andrzej Sapkowski, which I've butchered probably, Sword of Destiny, which is the second of the short stories of The Witcher. The Witcher series has 2 books of short stories and then novels. So this is the second of the short stories. I bought a box set of all the Witcher novels, so I have to read them eventually. I've written, this was delightful, and even though I've read the preceding book of short stories twice, The Last Wish is the name of the preceding one. I can't recall any of those stories. Except the general impression it left. That's the same with this. I had a rollicking good time with Geralt and Dandelion, and Yennefer is in this one a bit too. This one also has the very beginning of the story of Ciri, which if you've seen the show or played the games, you will know. She's pretty central to the plot, but she doesn't show up until the very end of this second book of short stories. I've written here, what is this? Is Geralt toxic masculinity? To the point where he is literally a mutant, not a man? Yes. Oh my goodness, where did that come from? If you've seen the show, some of these stories will be familiar to you, and the same with The Last Wish. They're pretty close to the books. Yeah, I had a good time. If you like the writing style of these, the really dry humour, I highly recommend. I gave it 3 stars, which means I liked it. I've definitely got it on my list, but also my TBR has grown exponentially. Thank you for hanging out with me and chatting with me on Twitter, especially. A lot of you chat with me about the books you're reading too. If you want to do a buddy read, I'm super keen to do a buddy read on Storygraph if you are also a Storygraph member. Just because it's not in my TBR doesn't mean I wouldn't read it with you. As I have mentioned many times in this video, my blog is linked below where I do more reviews and all the places you can contact me, and there's a subscribe button so that my irregular upload schedule doesn't affect you in any way. It'll just come in your box. Wow, that's innuendo. Bye.